Hey guys, ChocoTaco here, working as part of Team LevelCap to bring you high quality guides for PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. In this week's video, we'll look at tips for winning firefights, weapon recoil, the best ways to peek, and even how to improve your aim. Let's start by looking at the 3 different aim modes in PUBG. The first aim mode is hipfire. This is when you shoot without using the right mouse button. We'll be looking at the recoil for the SCAR, but what we're about to see holds true for all pistols, SMGs, and ARs in the game. As you can see, the recoil pattern when hip firing is pretty sporadic. After the first few bullets, we start to see a lot of horizontal recoil, and if we were shooting at a target, those bullets to the left would have definitely missed. I played a game using each aim mode, and in this game I'm only using hipfire. I landed at the school since close quarters is where hipfire works best. You can see I get this really easy kill on the first guy. The second guy though, down the hall, I have a lot of trouble killing this guy. I've got to slow down my shot quite a bit to get the kill. One thing that's really nice about hipfire is that you can shoot while running. With the other 2 aim modes, you're forced to walk while using them. The other benefit to using hipfire is that it's the fastest way to get shots off. With ADS, which we'll look at later, you have to spend time pulling out your gun to look through your sight or scope. It's only a fraction of a second, but that can definitely be the difference between getting killed and getting the kill. I picked up a shotgun here, and even though I didn't end up using it, I wanted to mention that shotguns have the same spread with all aim modes, so unless you're aiming at someone far away, I recommend you just always use hipfire with shotguns. The bottom line is you should pretty much only be using hipfire if you're right next to an enemy. Even if they're only 10 feet away, the other aim modes are going to be better. The second aim mode is when you hold down the right mouse button while shooting. You'll notice the crosshair gets smaller in first person. The recoil here is a lot better than hipfire. We see a lot less horizontal recoil until the very end, most of it's vertical. At the end though, we do see a couple bullets pretty far off to the right. This aim mode is my go-to for pistols. It doesn't take any extra time to aim and it increases your accuracy. I personally have a lot of trouble aiming with the pistol iron sights in PUBG, so holding down the right mouse button is definitely the best option for me. Keep in mind though, you can't run while shooting, so you'll be forced to walk while holding the right mouse button. We saw with hipfire that shooting enemies at even 10 to 20 meters away was pretty inaccurate. This enemy on the roof that I'm about to spot is about 50 meters away, and I managed to actually hit most of my shots while holding the right mouse button down. This won't always be the case though. There are no set recoil patterns in PUBG, so you could have really good spread on one clip, where you might have really terrible spread on another. Here it took me about 15 bullets to get the 5 hits needed to kill this enemy, and this guy was right in front of me. Similar to hipfire, I don't really suggest using this aim mode unless enemies are close by, or if you're using a pistol. The last aim mode is ADS, or aim down sight. This is when you just tap right click. This is by far the most accurate aim mode. We hardly get any horizontal recoil at all, and the horizontal recoil isn't really enough to miss an enemy. ADSing allows you to be really precise with your shots, which is extremely important in a game like PUBG where headshots deal considerably more damage than body shots and limb shots. You can be confident when you're ADSing that your bullets are actually going to land where you're aiming, unlike with the other 2 aim modes where your bullets can land outside of your crosshair. One of my favorite benefits to ADSing is that you can zoom. If you hold shift, you hold your breath, and you get somewhere near a 2 times scope amount of zoom. I use this almost always when I'm ADSing, and it's especially useful during the early game when you probably won't have access to a scope. The ADS zoom also works with iron sights, really useful for the first kills of a game. One last benefit to ADSing is that it lets you lean. This is especially helpful when peeking corners, and this is something we'll cover later in the video. The basic takeaway from this is that you should pretty much always be using ADS as your main aim mode. There are definitely some exceptions, the main one being when an enemy is right next to you. Taking that fraction of a second to ADS could be the difference between dying or getting the kill. Another exception is if you're pre-firing someone. For example, if you know someone's in a closet, you can just start spraying before you peek, or you can start spraying right as you peek. Let's move on and talk about peeking. This is a subject that seems really simple, but there's actually a lot more to it than it may seem. I can always tell when I'm fighting a really good player just by the way they peek. I can usually tell within a matter of seconds. Let's go ahead and look at some different ways to peek. I mainly use 6 different methods of peeking. The first 2 are lean right and lean left. I use the default key bindings of E for lean right and Q for lean left. You'll notice that the animation for leaning is actually really slow, so you're going to want to be able to strafe while leaning to get out a little quicker. I hold down E with my middle finger and use my index finger and my ring finger on A and D to strafe, and for leaning left I hold down Q with my middle finger and use A and D with my index finger and ring finger. The reason leaning is so good is because it allows you to peek with the smallest amount of risk. When done well, you'll be exposing mostly just your head and not the rest of your body. It also allows you to duck behind cover almost immediately after shooting. This makes it so that you can peek multiple angles in quick succession. Here I lean right for my first shot and left for my second shot. This doesn't give my opponent a good chance to hit me since I'm peeking from a different spot each time. The next two methods of peeking I use are the same exact thing we just looked at, but while crouching. This is going to put your head at a different height, so if there's an enemy already aiming at you, they'll have to readjust their aim to hit you. The last two types of peeks are just strafing out to the right and strafing out to the left. I don't use these as much, but sometimes it can throw your opponent off because your head will be a little bit higher than when you lean right or lean left. The trick now is to combine all 6 of these peeks together. When you're in a firefight, it's great to peek and shoot once or twice, and then re-peek in a different way. You also want to avoid making any kind of pattern, so for example, peeking left, right might not be good. Your main goal should be to keep the enemy guessing about what you're going to do next. Another way to do this is to peek from a completely different spot when you're behind a hill or in a building. After every few shots, move to a different window or to a different spot in the hill like I'm doing here. If you re-peek the same spot multiple times, it's going to be really easy for an enemy to line up a shot on you. But if you move, you'll have the element of surprise every time you peek. The key is, you want to have control of the fight. By choosing when and where you peek, you're making the enemy react to your moves, not the other way around. I'd like to talk briefly about communication because I think it's just as important as hitting your shots or understanding game mechanics. When you're playing with teammates, you want to be able to give them the most amount of information in the least amount of time. There are 3 pieces of information you should always give your teammates, the 3 Ds: direction, distance, and description. A good example of a callout might be east, 100 meters, house. That's everything your teammate will need to know about an enemy's position. Any additional information is always helpful too, like how many hits you've landed or if you're healing. Also, tell them what you're doing. Your teammate probably isn't looking at you, so if you're pushing, let them know so they can go with you. I really don't see many people using distance with callouts, including a lot of the top players that I watch. I think it's because they aren't comfortable or sure how far away something is. The best way to learn is to start doing it. As a reminder, each square in the minimap is 100 meters. The last thing I'd like to talk about is how to improve your aim. It's without doubt the most common question I get from other players, and it's the thing that will ultimately help you the most in firefights. The truth is, if you really want to work on your aim, you need to play a different game on the side. Unfortunately, PUBG is a terrible game for working on your shot. There are plans for the devs to include a shooting range in the game, but we have no idea when this will be added or even if it will be added. The problem is that there's so much dead time between kills that you truly can't practice your shot. Not only that, but PUBG isn't really a game where you rack up kills. Let's say you win a game with 10 kills, that takes something like 35 minutes, so that's about 1 kill every 3.5 minutes. And that's only sometimes. Sometimes you'll get no kills, sometimes you'll get 1 kill. Any other shooter that's fast-paced will work great for practicing your aim. Battlefield, Overwatch, Quake, and CSGO are all great options. I personally prefer CSGO Deathmatch because it revolves around a headshot mechanic, which is also true for PUBG. It's also one of the best ways to make the most shots in the shortest amount of time. More repetition will help create stronger muscle memory. It's also very important that you make sure your sensitivity in PUBG is similar to the sensitivity in whatever game you're playing. For me, a full swipe across my mousepad in PUBG is about 270 degrees or 3/4 of a full 360. So all I did was adjust my CSGO sensitivity to match that. If you're wondering how your sensitivity compares to top players, you can use the centimeter to 360 method to compare your sensitivity to theirs. This is just a measurement of how many centimeters it takes for you to turn a full 360. Most professional players in CSGO, Quake, and Overwatch have a centimeter to 360 measurement of about 30 to 60. My centimeter to 360 measurement is 50, so I have to move my mouse 50 centimeters in order to make it a full 360. If you don't have enough desk space for a full 360, you can just do the measurement of a 180 and then multiply by 2. You'll likely have the most success if you can play with a lower sensitivity. I recommend getting your sensitivity as low as possible while still being able to turn around quickly. If you think your sensitivity might be too high, start lowering it a little bit each day until you get it where you want it. Ultimately, you want to make use of your entire mousepad. At the same time, if you have high sensitivity and are successful with it, don't change it. Different things work for different people. Another important thing is to make sure that you're being critical of your aim. Just playing shooters might not actually help. Ask yourself why you're missing shots. Are you over-aiming? Are you under-aiming? Or are you running out of mousepad space? That's about it for this video, but if you have questions about firefights or about working on your shot, I'll do my best to answer them in the comments. Thanks for checking out the video, and good luck winning those firefights.